Hey everybody, my name is Andrew Davis and you are watching Conversations in Pop Culture, brought to you by my sponsor, Mixum Printing, the smarter way to print. I know printing your creative project can be confusing and stressful, but Mixum is here to make it easy. From their instant quote calculator that lets you get as many quotes as you want for free to their 24-hour customer support, Mixum is here to make sure your printing experience runs smoothly from start to finish. And you can choose from a range of premium printing options and materials, and the company has printed so many of my friends' successful Kickstarter campaigns, and a bunch of them you have heard about on this show, and they say the nicest things about Mixum, and Mixum produces an amazing quality comic, as well as a variety of other printing materials you may need, books, other things that are fantastic. And so if you're ready, and before I even tell you where I got to tell you where they can print. They can print in the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK. And Mixum pretty much can reach your audience anywhere in the world. So if you're ready to print smarter, not harder, head over to Mixum.com. And right now they're running a promotion where listeners of my show can get a 5% discount by using my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of a current order. And that's 5% off your first order. So that is Mixam.com. Type my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of your current order to get 5% off. And every percentage point counts when you're printing things, especially when you're running a Kickstarter. So I have with me cosplayer Ko Play. So welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, I am very excited because obviously you've done some Resident Evil stuff, you have a Tracer, and we're going to talk about all that stuff. But before we get into it, and I am super curious because everybody has a unique way to get into cosplay. How did you get into cosplay?
So, how I first got into it, I want to say it was like middle school. I saw my friends, they were like all dressed up, and it's like, holy crap, like why are you wearing a wig? Why are you wearing this? And it's like, oh, it's this thing called cosplay. And I was like, okay, it's really cool. So I was like, as any kid would do, I'm like looking this up on the internet, being like, okay, what is this? And I see all these like awesome props, like awesome, beautiful costumes that people have like put together. I was like, whoa, this is really cool looking. And it just kind of tumbled from there, and it just grew into this thing that I'm super passionate about and hopefully want to get into school for. So how that's all kind of started for me.
So to even go into further into this, what was your first cosplay that you put together? And we could break it down whether it's a closet cosplay or we could go more official if you would like. It's because everybody counts it differently.
Yeah, I think I think my first technical cosplay was a closet cosplay, and it was for Halloween. It was Bill Cipher. And that was I remember I'd taken like this bowler hat or something and I just spray painted it black. I had these like obnoxious white yellow socks that and just these knee-high boots, and it was just this Halloween costume, and that's just how it just this thrown together Halloween costume that was spray painted and just thrown together the night before, and it was like, okay, I'm doing this. So that was like my first cosplay.
So to even go further into that and throwing it together, and obviously Halloween's Halloween, we're heading into the month of October. For those who are witnessing this and you didn't know October comes after September, or conversely in 5 years from now when you're digging up all the dirt and everything that I said that's horrible when I run for office, one or the other, one or the other. Um, what was that process of even building this out? Because obviously the first one and putting things together, and it's also different when it's sort of the things you have in your house versus the things that you're going to the fabric store to buy or Michael's to buy, or like Hobby Lobby is a good example. That's another big craft store. So what was that entire process like of building it out? The first one, at least.
I think I think the very first one, since it was a closet cosplay, I literally just dug through my closet and also my mom's. I was like, okay, what's my mom got in here that might work? What do I have in here? I had like these black tights, like I said, yellow, very obnoxious colored socks. I was like, okay, this will work. And then I took inspiration from the internet. I was like, what kind of fan art does this person have? What cosplay does this kind of going on? And I just dug through the closets and I was like, okay, let's see what we got. And the only time I went to Hobby Lobby was to get that hat and spray paint, and I just went at it. And it was honestly, it was I have to find a picture of it because it was honestly probably my first favorite official cosplay I had done.
And then obviously going forward into this, and we're gonna get into some of your more professional cosplays in a sec here. I'm gonna dive into this a little bit further. Um, but to talk inside baseball, so where do your ideas come from with your cosplays? Because this is something that's very tricky because everybody gets inspiration for creative projects from all over the place. And where do your ideas come from and what is sort of the inspiration? Because you've done a bunch of cosplays from a bunch of different sectors. You know, I mentioned Resident Evil, obviously Overwatch, you know, Voltron is a big one. And those three things are not tied together by any stretch of the imagination.
They are not.
And so I'm
Whatsoever.
curious because it is very interesting when you look at cosplays, what people are cosplaying at. So where does that process start for you?
I'm trying to figure out a way to word it. So usually before I'm like I'm like, oh, I'm gonna cosplay this person. I would, if it's something I have to design, I would usually take the classic pen and paper and I would just kind of draw something out and be like, okay, let's see what this looks like. Or let's see how long sleeves would look on this, or a hat, or accessories. And if it's like a show or a video game, I would normally be like, who kind of fits me the most? So that way I'm comfortable in the cosplay and I don't feel like I'm forcing myself to wear something that I'm just like, who is this? This is not something I enjoy. Like from Voltron, Pidge was my favorite character. She was this nerdy like misunderstood girl, and I was like, that's me. That's me in school like most of the time. So I'm like, I relate to this person so much. Or usually it's the design of the character, like
To even go further into this, because obviously once you sort of have an idea for a cosplay and you're relating to that character, how do you then go map it out? Because where it gets, you know, do you sketch it out? Do you take references? Do you sort of just get a conceptual design? And how does that start? Because that's sort of the starting of the building process in a lot of ways. And I know everybody does it differently. I know people just they just know how to do certain things and then they build out. If it's, you know, the main part is a torso piece, they build out that torso piece and then they build everything else out. Other people sketch out, and I know people who 3D design or do, you know, really bad 3D designing, for lack of a better word, just to get a concept of what it's going to look like. And so I'm super curious how you go about that, because it is very interesting. Because I'm not a cosplayer by any stretch of the imagination. I never designed anything. I just understand and appreciate what people do with cosplays.
I would take references. I take a lot of references. Like Tracer, the second, most of the pictures on my Instagram, that's all the second time I made that armor. The first time I went into it where I was just staring at the references and tried to mimic it as much as I could, and it didn't come out well, at least I'd like to say. And then there's Keyleth, one of the most from Critical Role. I I had to
Well,
make
we're going
that.
to talk all about this, I
Yeah,
promise.
yeah. But I had to take references to create that whole thing. I had to like look at the comic books, the official art that they had put out, and I was like, okay, use this to create this in real life. And it was a very interesting and I don't want to say stressful, but it was a little stressful process because I was on a time crunch.
So to even go further into this, and obviously creating cosplay, there's a bunch of challenges that come with that. And obviously, you know, materials can be very expensive. Finding the right materials, you know, substituting materials, obviously measuring yourself, measuring materials. And then the big one, obviously styling wigs, I should say as well. Prop building can be a pain in the ass in a lot of ways. And it cannot, it could be a pain also because certain cons allow certain rules and certain things, like you can't string a bow in most conventions.
Mhm.
And it's very complicated what is allowed, what isn't. And then obviously the big one is balancing costs, because cosplay can get very expensive very quickly. It's like comic book hunting. Comic book
Yeah.
hunting starts out very cheap. Go to the store for $20, and then by the end of the year, you're now spending $200 a week in a comic shop. It happens, and then you realize where all your money's going. So how do you balance out all of those issues and challenges, and particularly the cost? Because I think that's what people really have a hard time with cosplay right now.
You really just you have to budget yourself. Yeah, it's hard, but especially with someone who doesn't make a lot of money like a week, especially with still school going on, it's like, okay, I need to budget myself out. This is what I need to buy this week, and then I'll buy this next week. And there's this great app that I like to use. It's called Cos Planner. You have all your elements listed out. You have the stuff you need to make, and then the stuff you need to buy, and you can also set yourself a budget on there. And it'll give you a warning most of the time, being like, "Hey, you're gonna go over your budget. Are you sure you want to do this? Do you want to extend your budget or lower it?" Or look for like a different product that's cheaper. So that's how I stay most of the time under budget, but some other times I go a little bit above.
Yeah, for those who don't know, I'm teaching an entire comic book investing class, and it's a big one. And there's a whole section on building budgets, and it sounds like it's common sense, and it is not. Building budgets is complicated. Understanding budgets, understanding how to cash flow a budget, and I go through all of that, and it's my favorite topic. I love money. I love everything about money. I love the entire, and then I understand a good chunk of the economy, and it is fascinating when you really get into all of it. So, but budgeting is such a skill set that people don't have, and it's crazy. So
it really is.
And then I know, because making like $100 stretch is insane. Especially, if COVID taught everybody one thing, at least the smart people out of COVID, people learned how to stretch $100 into about $200 if you were really good at it. If you were really good, not physically. Don't start stretching money, because you'll rip and it'll be very bad.
Yeah, don't rip your money. You kind of need that stuff. So I would.
But I digress, because I definitely want to get into the cosplay stuff and the things that you have done. And obviously, I'm a huge anime fan. And so we're going to start with Pidge from Voltron. And I think you didn't do old school Voltron. You did Netflix Voltron, which is fine. It's all right. I'm old school anime. I go back to the 50s. And then we go all the way back up. And then I'm a Tezuka, super fan. But anyhow, how did this cosplay come about? Because obviously Pidge is very popular. People love Voltron. Voltron on Netflix is one of those shows that sort of, I guess, started an anime vibe with Voltron, with Netflix. Wow, Voltron's the anime. It's been a long day. So what's the inspiration though? Because I'm super curious as an anime fan.
The inspiration was like, oh my gosh, I relate to her like so much. She's like this super nerdy, loves computer girl who is like, oh my gosh. I instantly fell in love with Pidge when I first started watching the show, because of like all of like the snarky remarks she would make to the other paladins. And I grew up watching the original. And I'd like to say I did like the original a little more than the reboot, especially following the later seasons. Not saying that it's not a great show. I'm not saying that. But the inspiration behind it was just I related to this fictional character on just some level, and I was like, okay, I really want to do this. And Pidge was also like, I want to say like my third cosplay. And it was
we're doing it out of order. Just so everybody knows.
Yeah.
I got super lazy and I didn't want to go through order. So I'm letting everybody know right off the bat. I am a total professional. It's what we do here. Um, but obviously, Pidge is a very interesting character, and I like her a lot and everything that goes on with her and what she brings to the team. And what was this like though building out? Because she has a particular uniform, obviously styling the wig, building the glasses or even finding the glasses because they are a particular type, and also sort of modifying her outfit a little bit because you give it more of what seems to be more comfortable to some degree as well. So what was that like really building all this stuff up? Because it's a little bit different than some of the other stuff we're going to talk about.
So originally when I first started doing Pidge, I had made the sweater. It didn't come out good. This is like when I first started sewing too, and it was just there was fraying fabric. It was some of it was hot glued together, and it didn't look good. It didn't feel good.
So let's talk
Eh,
about that because this is the art of cosplay. For those who don't know, I've never built. I just understand it because after speaking to so many people, you build your first thing and then you realize it's bad. And I'm trying to use nice words today. And so, what is that like when you realize that something isn't up to par, and then you either say, "Look, I'm just going to have to redo it and eat the cost because it happens sometimes," or you get to rework it, or do you then wear it and then you realize where the mistakes went? Because it gets complicated. I was speaking to somebody who redid an entire comic book because it wasn't great and they had to pay their artist again, or their artist might have equity. I didn't ask that question, but the idea is that for all intents and purposes, if you do something in comics and you want to redo art, well, and you want to redo 60 pages of art, you have to repay your artist for the most part. And in cosplay, sometimes you can recycle materials, but sometimes you can't. So what was that like? And what was that even determination? Because when you're just starting out and money's a bit tight, those decisions get hard.
I I remember I had oh my goodness. I had like thrown everything on one night and I was like, I'm gonna make some content. And then I kind of looked at myself in the mirror, I was like, ew, this doesn't look really good. But when you kind of realize that something's not good, you're either you're gonna have like two to three options. You're gonna have option one, you deal with it and you continue to do what you deal with what you have. Second option, you recycle the materials and make it better again. Or the third option is you end up buying it, which is what I ended up doing for Pidge for the sweater because
So,
I had no idea how to make that at the time. When I first started sewing, I had no idea how to make something like that. So I was like, okay, it'd probably be a little cheaper to buy the shirt itself and then wear it. But
so
I
to even talk about that, because there's a whole debate now in cosplay
yeah.
where it's people say, "Oh, the craftsmanship versus putting a cosplay together," but there's an art to putting something together in a lot of ways. So taking a bunch of parts and then saying, "Look, I am bad at this, but I can embody this character and I can wear it better than anybody else can." Or even finding half the cosplay and then building the other half because sometimes it's cheaper to do that. And so there's a whole debate where if you didn't make it all yourself, you're not a purist. And I'm in the camp of saying, well, if I could find somebody to make my cosplay for 90% cheaper than I can make it, and I can source it and I can get it done at a much better rate, then why wouldn't I want to do it that way? And so, because at the end of the day, it's supposed to look a visual position, at least the way I see it as a fan. And so, what was that also like, even just now having this and understanding even how something like this could be built as well? Because we all sort of reverse engineer things to some degree.
That whole debate where it's like, "Oh, if you buy the cosplay, this is you're not a cosplayer." That's I don't believe that at all. You're a cosplayer. You're you're costume play. That's what cosplay is. You're dressing up for fun. You're dressing up for acting purposes or whatever. It's like it doesn't matter if you make the costume or have someone else make the costume. Or like you said, buy half of it and then build the rest. That's what I had to do for one of them. It's still cosplay. You're still spending money, you're still taking the time, you're taking whatever you have to enjoy yourself for a hobby.
And I think there's just a misconception, and I think that there's been a bunch of bad actors to some degree that have came up with that concept, and I think it's done more harm than good. And I'm in the camp, and I think most cosplayers, because even most people in cosplay don't make money and don't make serious money, and so at a certain point, if you can find a way how to do your cosplay better, cheaper, or faster, and money is just the way you're doing it, then who cares? Because most people say, "Oh, I just want to take a picture with you," and that's how I view it. And maybe it's I'm not a cosplayer, maybe I don't get the craft side of it, but that's how I feel at the very least. And so I just think it's a big problem within in the community where there is that division, and I think it's a really bad issue. And I think it's gotten a lot less in COVID. And I think though pre-COVID it was a very hot topic, and I think it's been tamed a little bit. But I think that some damage has been done on it tremendously, and that's just my opinion.
Hmm.
I'm witnessing everything that I've witnessed in it. But I digress because we do have to talk about from Future Diary, because this is a perfect segue into having a psycho and psychotic knife wielding pink haired creature, for lack of a better word. To say the least, I mean, this game is
Yeah,
messed up. It's a
yeah.
messed up game
The
in
anime
so
was.
many ways.
Oh my god, that is
So,
one of. Besides Resident Evil, that that series was one of the most dark things I've watched. I don't
so,
know.
what's the story behind this cosplay? Because I think everybody knows who is from Future Diary. I don't think we need to explain what this character is, what this character has done. I'm just curious, how did this come about? Because when we go down dark characters, you go down crazy characters, you go down messed up characters, there has to be a reason to do this, and it's a very interesting situation, I would imagine.
I honestly can't tell you the reason why I started cosplaying her. I think it was literally just because, oh, she's a psycho who has pink hair. And I literally can't even, I can't tell you the reason why. Because, oh my gosh. I think that might actually have been the reason. Oh, she's this really cute psycho who is murdering people for somebody she loves. It's just, oh god.
Yeah.
I
I'm not gonna push too harder on that one. And then obviously I do want
That's
to talk
it.
about Ruby. I want to talk about Ruby Rose as well from Ruby, because you did one of those, and this is very interesting because it's got definitely a more Red Riding Hood feel to it
Yeah.
versus obviously Ruby is based off of Red Riding Hood for those who aren't well known, and a few other characters as well. But what was this like? Because it's definitely got more of a Red Riding Hood feel to it, and then also the scythe, and then it sort of got a little bit more of a mature Ruby feel to it as well. And so, how did this one come about, and what was it like building this one? Because it's definitely different than somebody's like Lab and Axe Ruby.
Ruby Ruby was this again, it's like the same thing with Pidge. Ruby was this like at first antisocial girl who had this giant scythe. And I was like, that's cool. I want to be her. And I I originally I made the cape and I had made the dress again. This was another cosplay that I had made originally, but I was like, doesn't look the greatest. So I ended up buying it. And then in Texas, there's a Renaissance festival, and there's always this one huge shop that sells props. And I saw that there was a ruby scythe, and I was like, I'm gonna go buy that. So I bought it, and then it broke on the way home, and I was like, oh no, I have to fix this. And it just, I I want to redo Ruby again because with the sewing capabilities I have now, I feel like I could make her outfit just perfect.
And so to even talk about that and buying it, and also just understanding how, because I'm gonna ask a question and it's gonna come off not necessarily correctly, but knowing your body type when buying a cosplay is beyond important in this sense. And so, what is that like figuring that out? Because obviously, do you buy a cosplay and then do you make alterations to it, or do you just buy something that is perfect for where you're at, and then that's sort of what you're doing? So, how does that all work? Because as I stated, it's an art in a lot of ways, and I think people don't understand that it's not the easiest thing because sometimes you have to buy a certain size and then alter it down, especially if you're going to add things or modify it as well.
But so that's I'm kind of in for my body type, I'm in that middle area where it's like a small or a medium, or like sometimes a small will even be too big, and I'm like, okay, this is strange. So I would have to go in and alter it. I'd have to take in the waistline a little bit, or do some fold, do some not drafts, darts, which is where you kind of make one section of a piece of fabric tighter to where it would form fit. And that's I had to do that for Ruby, like in the back. The zipper had come when I bought the outfit, the zipper was like completely broken. So I had to take out the zipper and I had to just re-sew it all back in. And it was like it even if you buy something, it might not come in right and you'll have to alter it yourself or get somebody to alter it, or just make sure that you get the right size and you take your measurements.
I had a custom cosplay built for me,
Mhm.
and I measured myself appropriately, and it worked very nicely until I became a lot bigger, and other muscles was added on to me, and all sorts of fun stuff. And also, I got slightly taller, and things happened, and I don't cosplay that character anymore because it's just not my jam anymore.
Mhm.
But it's so important to alter and make sure you measure yourself appropriately because it is a big deal when it doesn't
It's
work.
it's a big investment, especially if you get something custom made. You want to make sure that it's possibly like a few inches, a little too big, like a few inches. By few, I mean like two or one. So that way you'll if anything changes, you'll be able to keep wearing it
It,
because
it that
it's
cosplay
a
is
huge
going just
investment.
down to the bottom. It's just going down to the bottom. It's dead. It needs to be buried,
Mhm.
burned. I should donate it to somebody who wants to cosplay that character and get a tax write off. It's really
Yeah.
what I do. But I digress right there. And then the next one I want to talk about, and this one's really fun, and I like this one a lot, is your She-Ra,
Oh
Fedora,
my gosh.
because this one looks like the actual character from the show. And not to say the others don't, but this thing looks like it's pulled right out of it. And so, and I think this is one of the best cosplays you've done, minus the Resident Evil stuff. And so, how did all this come about? Because this is so interesting. And, we're going to get into it a little bit more, I promise. But I'm curious how it all came about.
The whole reason why I cosplayed She-Ra was because I grew up watching the original, and I remember as like a little girl, I was like, I want to be She-Ra so bad. Like, and then the reboot came out, and I really liked the representation from the newer show, and I just also loved the design because the design in the reboot it's way more simpler than the one from the 80s.
Yeah, yeah. In the
It's
80s,
a lot
they
more
got deep.
simpler. And not the 80s, but
You know why the designs are complicated in the 80s, right?
oh, yes, I do.
I
I
make it
I
too easy.
do. But that was She-Ra was my COVID cosplay. She was the first cosplay I had taken from just scrap fabric. From that whole costume is made from scratch. Everything except for the boots and the wig. Everything is handmade. And that was the first ever cosplay that I officially made like from scratch. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And then it looked great and it just I remember being so proud of myself when I like took everything out of my sewing machine and put it on my mannequin. I was like, this looks it looks like it's from the show. Like it looks like a piece of art that I just ripped from a page and made it 3D.
And so, what was that like really building out, like the gauntlets and the headpiece and the boots? and even, her skirt and it pleating a little bit, I guess is the right word, and all that stuff, because it is a lot of little nice tricks. And obviously, boot building and gauntlet building and headdress building is a whole bunch of different skill sets that are extremely different from sewing. I think this was your first time doing anything remotely like that. And so, what was that experience like for you, and even building that out, or getting it, or even under like buying components of it, or commissioning things out? So I'm not too sure how what you built, what you didn't build, what you made, and all that stuff. Because again, piecing together cosplays works immensely.
At first, since this was my like COVID project, I did get a little help with tutorials. Great great sources. Really, I really recommend tutorials as well, especially if you're newer to everything, especially sewing and foam working. But I use those, and those tutorials also helped me budget like all the fabrics and stuff. Like the fabrics I used, it's all stretchy spandex, especially for like the shoulder pieces. And that stuff is not cheap at all. So I used a lot of the tutorials that I saw, like Shira costumes. It's like I gotta budget this. Okay, I'm gonna go to this website and buy it from there. Or oh, this Joann's is having a sale on this certain fabric. I'm gonna go get the fabric because that's what the one I need. And
And to even talk about that, so when you're even budgeting and you're looking to go buy cosplays, because I know some people do this, is that they know that they have a game plan for at least 4 or 5 cosplays for the year. And they go out and they say, look, I know that I need some of this material, and they buy it in bulk.
mhm.
And they'll sort of, I don't want to say go in debt, but they'll go spend more than not that they have, but their reserves, knowing they're going to use it later on. And when sales happen and things like that, is that something you do, or is it that you're just building cosplays by cosplay? Because obviously, as we stated, it gets expensive very quickly. And if you get something for 20% off, every percentage point matters.
Usually, since I'm busy throughout the year a lot, I don't usually buy things in bulk. I would probably, and also because I haven't seen that at any of the stores I usually go to, but I usually make the costume where I'm like, "Oh, hey, I have time to make this," and I've been wanting to do this for like a couple months. So that was that was also the thing with Shira. I had made it originally, like I made it, I didn't like it. I remade it again, and it was oh my gosh.
It sounds like you got a good time with
It
it.
was the first one. I can't even.
And then let's talk about the sword too, because the sword looks like it's straight out of an Adventure Time. I'm not gonna lie, like even you see it, it looks like it's an anime Adventure Time sword that really comes out of She-Ra, comes out of the entire Masters of the Universe world that sort of She-Ra's in a lot of ways, and sort of the '80s. Even though it's the reboot, it's definitely got that vibe to it, where it's not an earth sword, for lack of a better word. So
Mhm.
what was that like, building that thing out? Because it's a interesting weapon, to say the least.
The pattern for the sword, because again, this was the first big prop I made. It wanted me to do like carve into foam. So what the sword is, it's 2 layers of EVA foam that sandwiched a wooden dowel. So the sword has like support and it's not flimsy and broken looking. And to get those like crevices on the bevel of the sword, they wanted to carve into it. And I was like, I can't carve. I don't know how to do that. So what I did, I took foam clay, laid it out over the top of it, and I sculpted it. And it came out just looking awesome. I'm the not e- the that gold part, that the sword, that's like my favorite part. Not even the blade itself, which was a complete mess. It was it was so much fun making that sword, and especially since it was the first time making a prop like that. It was,
And then obviously foam clay is sort of a new product that
and
has come.
it is a blessing. It is a foam clay. If you've got cracks like in your armor that you've made or cracks in your props, you just take some of that stuff, put some water on your thumb, just smooth it out, and it's all filled in. You don't have to worry about it. No messy glue, no messy fillings. It's just a blessing. If I get the chance, I'm buying foam clay in bulk. I don't care how big the bulk is, I'm buying it.
I mean, I don't know anything about foam clay. I learned about that on Monday. This is how new I am to everything that's going on. So this is something where I know nothing about. So if you hit me up about questions about foam clay, everybody, it's not going to be a good answer. I'll redirect you to somebody else like immediately. Like it's bad. I also learned you could apparently sand down foam. There's other
Mhm.
foam. It's I went a whole discussion. We had like a 30-minute discussion with the person I interviewed on Monday about foam. Most interesting cosplay conversation I've ever had. I didn't know there was so much information about it out there. It's an art in of itself. And how do you feel this was received? Because I don't know if you've brought this to a con yet, because obviously COVID is a very, very complicated entity to deal with, and cons have been shut down for a while now, and now a bunch of them are coming back. But have you brought it to a con? Because the internet has been sort of, highlighting it a little bit. But the internet's the internet, and it's not exactly fan to fan reaction.
I did take She-Ra to a con. I back in I want to say July, I wore her to Delta H Con, which is like a smaller con here in Houston, and the amount of reactions I got from it, it was just it was so fulfilling. It was just it was amazing. Especially for since it was something that I made myself. I was like, "Oh my gosh, people actually like this. People actually like how I look right now. Oh my gosh. I don't know how to respond to this."
And what is that like? Because obviously, when you bring something and then something is hot, and obviously, I think this applies to all your cosplays to some degree, and people are like, "Oh, that's awesome!" and "Oh man, I've never seen that before," and you're getting that because feedback is important. I feel in everything that's done. And when people shoot me messages about my podcast or other things that I've of excuse me that I've done, it's the idea that I know I'm either on the right track or I'm not on the right track, and I got to sort of retool something. And so, what was that entire thing like for you in figuring out saying, oh, if people really are responding well to this, I must have hit the mark here in a lot of ways.
Whenever people are like, "Oh my gosh, you look amazing," or "Wow, I've never seen this." Whenever you get remarks like that when you're in costume, it makes you feel like $1,000,000. It makes you, especially if you're someone who's like ever suffered from like low self-esteem, like low self-image. It it literally it fulfills you. It makes you just oh, I can't even describe it. It's just an amazing feeling when someone says like, "Oh my gosh, you look amazing." Or you literally have like some little kid come up to you to just stare at like just stares at you and it's like like it's just an amazing feeling. It really is. I can't even describe. I'm literally lost for words. I get so giddy talking about it too. It's just oh my
And and
gosh.
and and I'm about to make you more giddy because let's dive into Critical Role. So I am not a D&D player. I've never played. I apparently just backed a D&D project that should be shipping out to me soon, and I think it's pretty cool, but I have no time for it. I have no time for it because legitimately this entire business will fall apart if I start playing D&D. It will be bad. It will be bad, and nobody will be interviewed. It'll be terrible. So keep me away from a D&D game, everybody. But Critical Role obviously is sort of in that realm in a lot of ways, and you did Jester, and there's a lot going on. So obviously, there's some weapons that I think are in play. There's some body paint that's in play, and body paint can be very dangerous in a lot of ways.
Oh
Wig,
yeah.
obviously, clothing, and a variety of other stuff. So, what was this entire thing like, building it and even prepping this up? Because I don't think people understand applying body paint is not just a one and done. It can take an hour, it could take 30 minutes, it could take 3 hours. And it's also, and correct me if I'm wrong, you also need to plan when you're going to wear that cosplay at a convention, because you can't just change midday.
Mm-mm.
It's got to be more of a battle plan type of thing.
Mm-hmm. With Jester, again, she was one of the first outfits I made by hand. Looking at Critical Role, it's just these amazing cosplayers, let me just say that, who have handmade like beautiful pieces of art. And one of Jester's main weapons in the show is a giant lollipop. So what I had to do for that, I had to take some pool noodles, swirl them, glue it together, and paint it, and put it on a 6-foot pipe to make it this, I don't know, almost 8-foot tall lollipop to lug around at a convention. That's just the lollipop I made recently. I haven't worn her yet out, but I'm excited to. I get to carry around a huge lollipop. It's gonna be great. But body paint, um, not the funnest thing to wear when it's 90 degrees outside, especially if it's water activated. Like, and especially if you go to a convention, you just can't change midday unless you want to go all the way back to your hotel room or house, shower, and then go through that whole process of getting into another cosplay. It's body paint's interesting. I'll just say that.
I can imagine. Again, I've never done it. I have no intention to. I have enough things to worry about, and I am not interested in going down that path anytime
Yep.
soon. Anytime soon. And I am more of a spectator than I'm a participant in cosplay for a bunch of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously even going further, because this was another one from there, which is Keyleth. And Keyleth is fascinating because I think you did one version and you weren't too happy with how it came out, and then you went Vox Machina on it.
Mm-hmm. The original one that I first did was this red dress. I didn't like it. It wasn't Keyleth. And then I don't even know how I missed it, but the Vox Machina Origins comics, Keyleth had this outfit, and I was like, oh my gosh, this outfit is beautiful. It had it's this turtleneck crop top with this not gray, green overlay over it. And I just fell in love with it. And then the staff, and then the headpiece, the antler headpiece that goes along. I loved the design. Now making the cosplay, that was interesting. Since it's such a custom looking outfit, there was no turtleneck top that had triangles stuck cut out at the top. So I had to make the pattern myself. I had to take saran wrap, wrap it around my chest, masking tape, duct tape, and draw on one half at least, draw out what I needed to cut out, and then mirror that to again get the other side. That was
So to even talk about this, because obviously people use patterns, people build things custom, things don't get custom done sometimes, or you don't have a pattern to work off of. And what is that like when you're buying a pattern versus not buying a pattern and all that stuff? Because it's very interesting, that realm of cosplay, and people make a lot of money in the cosplay community by selling patterns and selling files and a variety of other things. And obviously, when you get into things that use patterns, it's a little bit different than the next 3 cosplays we're going to talk about, or possibly 4, which don't use patterns. I think that we're going to talk about obviously Tracer and the Resident Evil stuff is not really pattern oriented, but what is that even like, finding patterns too? Because there's a bunch of people who have a bunch of different versions of patterns of characters, and some of them are easier to use than others as well.
with especially if usually I go to Etsy. I try to find the specific character pattern for the specific outfit like I'm working on. Um, but other times you can't find that. So you would have to take an existing pattern from either a creator or even a crafting store, and you would have to modify it, which is something I did have to do for who? I think it was for Jester. That's who it was for. And but it's you have to
Sounds
have
like a good time.
it's fun. It's super fun.
Technically, I sold a pattern once. It was in Cosplay magazine, and they threw in as a bonus. And I sold it for like $8, which basically paid for like 2/3 of Cosplay magazine on eBay. And I was thrilled because I was happy to read my magazine for cheaper. And the pattern wasn't serving me anything. And the person who got it was thrilled because they got it relatively cheap and they needed it. And I didn't understand what it was used for. I don't know what it's used for. And if I opened it up, it would have been useless to me. So it benefited somebody. And I was like, cool, this is great. So obviously that's how I view it, is that if I get a pattern, I'm happy to sell it to somebody, and I'll sell it to you for cheaper than everybody else in the marketplace.
Yep.
Because it doesn't benefit me in any which way, and any money's better than no money. And also with these cosplays, you took a bunch of photos out in the woods.
I did.
So I've done my homework. I scrolled through your Instagram. Now I don't remember everything I saw on your Instagram, but I scrolled through it, and there was a lot of stuff going on. A lot of people from Critical Role, a lot of other stuff from Critical Role was up there. Also, you did like a 360 spin that you were part of, I think, as well. And so, what is that like to be in a community that does have a lot of people doing these characters and engaging, and it's very rich, both from the comics, and I think Critical Role has Pop Funkos, and I think it's a show, and some other stuff that's going on with it. And so what is that like to know there's a big community there, and it's a very niche community from my understanding, and a very tight community?
The Critical Role community, from my experience, obviously, yes, there will be a couple bad apples in every community, like no matter what it is, but most of the Critical Role community are just these super nerdy, very sweet people who are like willing to help one another to create cosplays or create content. Like it's to be in a community that like people have so much devotion towards, not just toward like a show, but toward like other people showing like being willing to help somebody. It's just it's it's great. I love being in this community so much. And especially when you make like such great friends, it's you feel like to some extent you've made like a second family, and that's how I feel with most of the people in that 360 video you were talking about. I like to consider them my second family because they're just such amazing people, and I'm so happy I met them.
No. I enjoy that. I thought it was a very cool concept and thing that was out there. I thought it was super interesting. And again, I'm not big into Critical Role. I don't think I know very little about it. And it's just like it's hard for me to get into stuff. But the next thing that I'm into is actually Overwatch. I used to be a big Overwatch player. I'm taking a long hiatus from playing video games. And I know you did sort of a basic diva, and then you did a really interesting Tracer. And what's the story behind the Tracer? Because obviously Tracer's jacket, you got the guns, goggles, hair, and all that stuff. And I think I used the image for the graphics that I put out. So what's the story behind Tracer? Because obviously, and I am a bad Tracer. I am the worst Tracer. And I don't know how to use Tracer. I know how to kill Tracer. I don't know how to use Tracer. So it's not that hard. If you're Farah, it's really not that hard to kill Tracer.
I I am a Mercy main. I don't know how to play Tracer either, and I can't do anything as Mercy. I am a support character. I can't kill
just got
anybody.
the Coca-Cola variants for Tracer for Free Comic Book Day, and they're phenomenal. And I like Tracer as a character.
Oh yes. I I love Tracer's like personality. Like she's so bubbly, she's so giggly, and it's just she's a really positive character that I really enjoy. I loved her like the London Calling comics that came out. I loved that story, that lore for Tracer. And the Tracer's cosplay, it was one of the cosplays I half bought and half made. So the jacket and the leggings I bought the leggings from a creator and I bought the jacket off eBay from somebody, I don't know. But the the accelerator, like I said, most of the pictures on my Instagram, those pictures are the second one that I made. Cause again, first one I didn't like it. It's made out of hot glue. Don't recommend using hot glue on EVA foam. Doesn't work, doesn't come out well. But the chrono accelerator, I had this huge pattern that was like little bits and pieces, basically a puzzle. I'm staring at reference photos, trying to think, okay, how am I going to do this? Where does this piece go? Where does this go? And it all slowly just came to what it looks like now. And I think my favorite thing about the accelerator is the lights. The lights were a very big improvement. The lights that's in the back and then the front. That was like the big improvement that I think really brought that whole cosplay together, because that's what Tracer is like known for. And most of the posters that you see of her, there's a train of lights following her. So I think
Yeah, there's also
there's
something where it's crystal clear that it's almost lit up in a lot of
mhm.
things as well. And whenever she's in action, there's that going on, and it's very interesting with that. And so it's very cool. And obviously, I don't know how much you travel, but with I don't know how sturdy the accelerator is by any chance, but obviously, how do you protect your cosplays when you're traveling and storing, especially with fragile items? Because I don't know how fragile this is or how sturdy it is, because that's a big issue in a lot of ways too, especially when you are, going out of state, or you're going on a plane, or you're driving 300 miles. Things happen, unfortunately.
I haven't traveled to an out of state con yet, but when I do storage my stuff, I have I have a lot of scrap fabric. So most of the time, if there's like a fragile piece or like a piece I know is gonna bend and possibly break, I'll kind of like wad it up or put it like in a plastic bag, kind of like bubble wrap. I'll kind of in Tracer specifically, it folds together to where the front and the back will meet, but there's these like over the shoulder pieces
Yeah.
that's elastic, and it's also like it's not flexible paint, what like I started using for some of the pieces in the front. And I had to take that kind of bubble wrap and stick it to where it wouldn't break or fall, and then I tightly packed everything into this like those fabric boxes that kind of like fit in shelves like that. That's what I have it stored in, and it's stored somewhere and it's safe. And I would really recommend it. Like I would, if I were to travel on a plane with it, I'd probably have that as my carry-on. I wouldn't put it in a suitcase. I really wouldn't.
No. And I asked that because, obviously weapon traveling and all sorts of
Mhm.
stuff. And it gets massively complicated when you're moving things around and you're bringing stuff back. And I know people who bring stuff back from Australia, and it is a complicated entity. And I know people who
Very.
travel all over the US, with cosplay stuff and valuable comics and a variety of other things too, which I know people who have brought $30,000 worth of comics on a plane, and I'm like, oh my god.
Whoa.
And I'm like, dude, like even and and so there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and transporting goods is complicated. But I love it. It's my favorite thing is operations and logistics. I love operations and logistics. Like I get all excited about when we dive into operations and logistics and numbers and doing things. Oh, it's the best conversation you could ever have. Another person who loves that. So anyhow, though, I do want to talk about one of my favorite video game franchises. Obviously, Overwatch is one of them, and the other is Resident Evil. And we'll talk about Ashley Graham because that's kind of how I found you. Is that I'm like, who would cosplay Ashley Graham? Put it on Instagram because this is the thing: is that she's in one game and you go and it's like nobody has cosplayed her. She's like an underrated cosplay.
It's because everybody hates her so much.
I love her. She's great.
So why?
Okay, once you get her in the night outfit, what I do is I go and I find a place to hold up. I kick the ladder off. I just leave her down. They try to kidnap her, and then she kills everybody. It's fantastic.
Exactly.
I do nothing. I just chill out, and it's great. It's absolutely great. And you the chainsaw can't get through it. It's fantastic.
It's great.
Nothing can
It's
kill
like
her. In the night armor, nothing can kill her. It's great. But what's the story about how this came up? Because obviously Resident Evil 4 is considered to be one of the greatest video games of all time. Game Informer for their 300th magazine ranked the top 300 games. I think Resident Evil was like number 39 on the list, 4, which is crazy because it's nearly a perfect game. It's arguably the best game out of the entire series. And everything about that game is so well done. And
especially for the time that it was made, it's like, whoa, this looks phenomenal.
Even still, it looks good.
It still looks great.
And they're talking about rebuilding the engine on it. I don't know how they're going to rebuild the engine on it.
They're making it a VR thing, and I'm like, okay, that's the one time I'm not going to play a Resident Evil game. I'm not doing it VR. I could barely do it now.
Honestly, I'm not a VR guy, in which I don't have VR glasses. I don't want to. I don't really want to go spend $300, $400, $1,000 on good VR. I have enough gadgets, and that's my problem with virtual reality right now, is that the cost for quality is so expensive.
It's so much, yeah.
I have better expenses. Like I'll go spend like $1,000 for an iPad.
Yeah.
Because that's an actual useful tool that'll last me 4 or 5 years, and I use it almost every day. I spend a lot of money on my laptop because I use it every day. You know, I spend a lot of money on my phone. I just bought Raycons. They weren't that expensive, surprisingly. They were like $64. But I use them every day. I'm not going to use VR gaming every day. I would rather buy cryptocurrency straight.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, getting back to Ashley. So how did that come about?
So,
don't be talking about pastries with me either. See, there's gonna be a joke, and that joke's gonna make sense when she explains.
So the whole thing, how Ashley came up, I originally just planned on doing Bella. From RE4, not 4. Nope, she's from RE8. And then this one Leon cosplayer, Bodacious Bagels.
Exactly. Here we go.
Hits me up on Instagram. It's like, have you ever? I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but he asked me, he's like, if I've ever played RE4 before, and I was like, yeah, it's been a while, but I've played it. And he was like, do you know who Ashley Graham is? And I was like, yeah, I do. I didn't really remember who she was, and I had to go look her up. And when I saw that her most used line in the game was "Leon, help!" I was like, I want to be the damsel in distress for this one time. And I just, in the first 2 days where we were talking to one another, I'd got the cosplay and I finished it. I bought everything online that night, and I was like, I'm doing this.
It's not that complicated.
It's not. It's one of the most comfortable cosplays I have to wear, and I would probably not, but I would probably wear this on an everyday occasion if it didn't look weird.
No. I mean, she's in normal civilian clothes for the most part. She's in a sweater and basically a little bit more than a mini skirt, pretty much.
She has like a turtleneck sleeveless sweater, and then a knitted sweater over that, and then a green plaited skirt, and then knee-high boots.
I don't know who this guy is. I mean, I mean, I'm just saying that it looks a certain way here.
I did
Like,
wear it to work. I literally did wear it to work. I wore it to work one day so we would meet in person for like for the first time, and it was great.
and so did you introduce yourself? Hi, I'm Ashley Graham. I'm the president's daughter.
I wish I'd done that. That would have been
Did you
great.
get a Jack Krauser to kidnap you too?
I don't know. I think Kyle has something planned, and I don't know what it is yet. So
There are so many things I could say, and I just don't want to incriminate myself so quickly. I mean, I legitimately can just go down the road here. Like,
just there's so many things with Ashley. It's just oh, I don't know, because this happened to me recently. Did Leon snipe you? Did you die that way? Or did you get kidnapped by one of the cult leaders in the castle that repeat the same phrase over and over again? And it's literally maddening.
so do you know why they repeat the same phrase over and over again?
I do, yes.
They're telling you what to do.
They literally are.
It's great. It's such a great game in so many ways.
So good.
And so obviously to even talk about this, because obviously it's Bodacious Bagels. Obviously, I think I just ruined Kyle's cover right there. I'm sorry, Kyle. If you ever meet in person, just tell me who you are and we'll go to the bar if you're old enough. That is. I don't know. I mean, I'm 28, so unless you have a fake ID, I mean, if it says Leon, I'm totally cool with that too. That'll be the greatest bar story ever. I'll go as Hunk, you can go as Kennedy, and we'll have a good time. It's mercenaries all over.
Perfect. It's perfect.
This is so. Hey, I got a custom TMP, so I don't know what he. But let's be realistic. Hunk and his custom TMP is savage, and Hunk's P9 is an awesome weapon. But I digress right there. I'm a big mercenaries fan. What can I say? But to even go further, what was that like having in Leon S. Kennedy? Because some people know who Ashley Graham is, but I don't think Ashley can be really mistaken for somebody, but it can go unnoticed at a convention because it's not necessarily flashy and it might not register. But then if you have Leon around, people get it instantly because it's just people are like, oh, it's the pair. And so what was that like? And what is that like on Instagram? Even though you tell people certain things on Instagram, certain things don't register sometimes.
I've not worn Ashley to a convention yet, but I do plan it. I definitely plan on it at the end of no. I would really like to talk right now. At the end of October, there's a convention that me and Kyle are planning to go to. I'm gonna go as Ashley, and he's gonna go as Leon. I don't. Maybe Ashley might get recognized without Kyle being there. I'm not completely sure.
No, it's a good question because I've never seen an Ashley Graham at a con.
Neither have I, and I've gone to conventions since 2018. Obviously, I mean it makes sense. I mean, it's an older game. People are moving on to newer stuff. I mean, at that point, I think Resident Evil 7 came out. No, yes, it did. So people were like moving on to the Resident Evil thing, and I haven't seen an Ashley. So
I mean, I've been doing cons for 10 years, and I've never seen an Ashley. And even 2000, when I was going, I've been a fan going to cons since like 2007. And I've never seen an Ashley at a convention. And that's why it's so interesting. That's kind of part of why I wanted to talk to you in particular is because I've never seen this. And this game is known as, one of the top Resident Evil games out there. And everybody knows the game. Everybody knows who Ashley is. Not everybody knows who, actually, not everybody knows who Barry Burden is. And that everybody knows who Jill is, everybody knows who Chris is, but there is a bunch of characters people don't know. And then obviously talking about newer games with Resident Evil, obviously Resident Evil 8, I haven't played it yet. I don't know if I'm going to. It honestly doesn't appeal to me. It really doesn't appeal to me. The same way Resident Evil 6 appealed, Resident Evil 5 appealed to me, 7 appealed to me. 8 doesn't. And obviously you pay Bella. and I don't know how to say that name. It's like Demis Creek or something.
Dimitrescu.
There's no U at the end. It's such a
Mhm.
weird name. I'm
It's
not
I
gonna.
believe it's Romanian. I want to say that,
I
but
don't know what it is. I thought it was
it's
like Italian. Like it is confusing to me. And like I'm on Wikipedia and there's like a name pronunciation thing with it. And oh my god, it's the most annoying thing in the world. And I don't even know what's going on with her and her clan and all that stuff. And all I know is that Bella dies in a very interesting way. And it's like Nemesis, and you don't even get to kill her. It irritates me watching gameplay on this with Ethan running away from her. They're like beating around the bush and they're not giving me what I want. It's like the vertigo fight in Resident Evil 4.
Mhm.
Exactly. It's a cheap ripoff, but not to destroy your entire childhood and labor it over. I just hate her entire character.
Yeah.
Not because she's a bad character, but give me a better boss fight.
That's I completely agree with that. I really wish that the Dimitrescu daughters had a better boss fight. I mean, their boss fights are pretty simple in the game, and I wish, since there's three of them, I wish it had gotten progressively harder throughout the boss fights. Because you have to kill them in the same way. Because I guess a spoiler alert, you had the way to kill them or weaken them is you have to break a window and let cold air in. Because they are technically made out of flies, and flies do not respond to cold temperatures well, and they die.
But if you shoot a fly, it dies.
That's also true.
If you light a fly on fire, it
It
dies.
dies.
If you swat a fly, it dies. If you
That's the
introduce
whole.
Nemesis and Nemesis shoots a bunch of bullets into it, it's gonna die.
It's gotta.
I'm just saying, I could think of 15 different ways in
It's,
the Resident Evil universe how to kill them. Just saying, but anyway, how did this one come about? Because it's so interesting how like it's very, the cloak and then like the face tattoos and it seems simple, but it's not. How all this was built.
the so I had read this is I wanted to wear this to a con that was in July. I didn't have the time to make the dress, but I made alterations to it. Like I'm getting more realistic accessories that are on her chest pieces and her an actual necklace. I'm getting that remade. I'm commissioning someone to make that more game accurate. In the game, she has like this huge lace like cloak, and it's I honestly really like it, and I really liked it. And so I took this black laced tablecloth, and I made it look like what it looks like in the game, and I loved it. The makeup is probably my favorite part of the costume, because usually most of the characters I do are like relatively normal looking and don't have blood covering half of their face. But what I've had to do with the blood, because it has to look like spatter, because she's, I guess, like a vampire. She eats people. She drinks blood. You've got to, the way I do it, I take a toothbrush, I dip it in fake blood, and most of the time I just kind of flick it. Just flick it onto. It's also like a really easy painting technique to like do stars and like galaxies and stuff. I learned that. And then the face tattoo, originally I had to draw it on, which was very hard because it's on your forehead and usually your hand is like right here in front of your face, and you can't see the mirror in front of you. You can't see what you're doing with your hand right here. I recently bought from an artist. I bought temporary tattoos, which put the makeup together. It's game accurate. It's beautifully made. It's just the whole makeup process is my favorite thing. And then you have the veins and the dark circles under her eyes. I One of my favorite recent cosplays I've done. It really
And
is.
so how was it received? Because it's very interesting, and obviously, Resident Evil 8 did very well for Capcom, It's very popular. I have my suspicions. You know, I think certain people were paid. I think Capcom announced that, what was it, Yanahan was sort of paid in promotion, I think, was one of them, but I think several others were underneath the table. I can't prove it. It just seems a little too coincidental that it dropped on the market before the game dropped and everybody did it at the exact same time. I have my suspicions. At some point, something's going to come out, and well, you know, I'm calling it like I see it. And me and DJ Croft were speaking about this live about a few months ago, and it just seems way too coincidental. But how was this cosplay received, both online and at conventions? Because Resident Evil 8 did really well for Capcom.
I haven't seen a huge interaction with my Bella stuff online. Excuse me, but at conventions, again, it's that moment where people are like, "Oh my gosh, you look exactly like the character. Oh my gosh, you look absolutely terrifying and great at the same time." I made a kid cry wearing this costume. And that was I think that's the most memorable interaction with somebody I've had because I've never made a kid cry before. But she's so scary looking. This kid just looked at me and just started crying, and I just felt so bad.
That's kind of funny, and I think that's hilarious.
It is. Like, I saw like the parent sitting right next to the kid, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna turn around and walk the other way. Just I called my friend, I was like, what do I do? I just started laughing.
And obviously we're gonna stop right there because I don't think I could top that with any more questions. But I am curious, and you know, where do you think cons are going? You know, with everything that's happened, and I know we're making a real hard shift here from making kids cry to talking about cons. But somebody's gonna shoot me, and my parents are gonna shoot me in my house if I don't end this soon. I know it. So this is I'm gonna get yelled at so they can walk my dog, their dog, but she runs the house.
Mhm.
It's just the way it works. You know, she's the princess, and we will get to live
Oh,
here.
oh yeah, I totally understand that.
The King Charles Cavalier Spaniel. She weighs like 18 pounds, and she runs the house. It's her. It's horrific, and she runs the house. We're gonna leave it at that.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
it's her house. We pay for it. She lives here. But where do you think cons are going? Because obviously things are chaotic in the U.S. They're chaotic in the world. I had somebody on from Australia last night. They're in their 7th lockdown. Basically, you can go play, go back in, go play, go back in, go play, get enough things for the liquor store for the next 6 months, then go back home and you're locked down again. And that's how Australia has been for pretty much the start of COVID. They got to play out for about 2 weeks to go to the liquor store and then come back. Is pretty much what's the last lockdown in Australia looks like. So where do you think cons are going in the U.S. now that I've explained Australia to everybody in the room?
I can't really say for other states because I haven't experienced what cons are like in the other states.
You're in Texas.
I'm in Texas, yes.
You're in Texas, which is a very fun place to be.
Yep.
I love Texas. Don't get me wrong.
But with the way everything is going right now, people with the mandate in Texas, like, oh, you're not required to wear a mask, whatever. People are either going to wear a mask, people are not. People are going to get vaccinated, people are not. It's just, I can't really say anything about that. And I still think that either cons are going to continue to go on or they're going to shut down because they feel as though, okay, this looks bad. We're not going to do it.
What's going to happen, and I think it's going to be crystal clear, is that New York Comic Con is happening in like 9 days or so, I think, and that's going to be a real test, I feel, about how big cons are going to operate. Because if it's not profitable for vendors to be there, that's going to be a shift. If people don't have the best experience, that's going to be a shift. If not enough money's to made to justify a position, that's going to be a shift. If there's an outbreak, that's going to be a shift. If there's not an outbreak, that's going to be a shift. So I think New York Comic Con is going to be a very much trial by experience. And I also think that some people are saying with like having bars between celebrities, and now you take a picture and it's not really, you can't touch a celebrity and it's getting weird. And I think that there's a lot of things that just can't be solved until this is taken care of. And until we figure out a better way how to deal with COVID, get rid of it, get stronger vaccinations, get smarter, get herd immunity. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not a scientist, but clearly there are problems, I feel, in this, and that's why I'm sending things out till things are more solvable. Because to be honest, if I'm going to go spend $3,000 at a con, I want to be able to touch the celebrity.
Yeah.
Like,
I would want to stand next to the celebrity that I paid to come see, and
I don't want a
pay for
bar
a
and a
picture.
glass panel between us. I'm not paying for that.
Mm-mm.
And if I'm paying for it, there has to be a discount.
Exactly. Yeah.
And a significant one that moves the needle. But that's just how I feel. So on that note, I do want to give you an opportunity to self-promote. So where can people bother you on Instagram, find you on Instagram, check you out, support you? Because obviously that's big. Follow you on Twitter. Facebook pages are big. I don't know your Facebook page, so when I tag you on Facebook, that's going to be a big one. And I think I'm going to miss your Claire Redfield, but we don't like Claire, so it's all right.
Most of my handles are Ko Play. On Twitter, it's Ko Play 4. I don't know why there's a random number, but there's a number. And then on Facebook, it's Ko Play Studios, along with YouTube as well, which I plan on posting a lot of stuff on YouTube soon. So if you would like to go see what's coming up, go subscribe.
And I've been saying this, and I'm going to continue to say it. You have to support indie. What that means is that you're not Marvel, you're not DC, you're not a top cosplayer, and so the best way how to support indie people is obviously Patreons, buy me coffees when they create them. PayPal donation links are a big one. I understand Gumroad, with prints and then print on demand stuff. That's a big one. So obviously financial support is one of those things that's big, and obviously you're going to get to that stage at some point. And more importantly, though, follow people on Instagram, like their posts, share their posts, follow people on Twitter. Check out when they have Facebook pages, or they're on Twitch, or they're YouTube, and subscribe and actually watch their videos and leave comments. Like their videos. If you don't want to leave a comment, just give it a thumbs up. It goes a long way.
It really does, especially for I'd like to consider myself a smaller cosplayer. It really helps getting us just out there and recognized, because obviously there are other people doing this for years and they've got this huge following, and then all the smaller people don't usually get recognized. So it's always appreciated for a share, and a comment. So do it.
And then obviously, and I add on to this further, where I have Buy Me a Coffee. I'm an indie content creator. I have a sponsor, and while they cover a lot of stuff, running a podcast and running any indie project is not cheap, and it does require a lot of time, effort, materials. I do like coffee. I do drink a lot of Monsters, and I like to afford that stuff. So yeah, no, seriously, Buy Me a Coffee basically buys me a Frappuccino every week, which is funny because Buy Me a Coffee is like Patreon, and I buy coffee with Buy Me a Coffee. But anyhow, that's not the point here. That's not the point here. But again, it goes back to the idea that you have to support indie content creators, and the best way to do it, first and foremost, is economically, because it does matter, and then more importantly, just as important, I should say, is also social media, because I get that everybody is in different economic brackets, and not everybody has $5, $10, or $100 to spare. But Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, they're all free. YouTube's free, and it doesn't cost you anything to go and watch a video or like this or share something, or if you know somebody who might like it, or if you know somebody, for instance, I know a bunch of people who are interviewers, share somebody that way. If you know somebody who's an interviewer, that's extremely helpful as well. So on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Thank you guys. Thank you for having me. Go follow me.
I think that's a wrap.
Woo!